You won't believe what happened when an HOA tried to evict an elderly man from his own home. They thought they had power, rules, and a perfect plan. But they didn't realize the man's daughter wasn't just anyone. She was a judge. And she was about to teach them what justice really means. For most of his life, Frank Thompson had lived a quiet, steady life. After retiring from 40 years of teaching history, all he wanted was peace, a little garden, a front porch, and the sound of wind through the trees. So when he bought a modest house in a suburban community called Lakeview Estates, he thought he'd found his paradise. But he didn't know that paradise came with its own self-appointed queen, Karen Whitmore, the HOA president. Karen was everything people imagine when they hear OOA Karen. Short blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, clipboard always in hand. She walked the neighborhood like she owned it, measuring grass heights, checking mailboxes for violations, and sending friendly reminders that felt more like threats. At first, Frank didn't pay much attention to her. He was polite, even when she warned him about leaving his trash bins visible or planting flowers outside the approved pallet. He'd smile, say, "I'll take care of it," and go about his day. But one morning, things changed. Frank came outside to find a bright orange notice stuck to his front door. Notice of violation, non-compliant structure. Failure to address will result in fines and legal action. The non-compliant structure? A small wooden ramp he'd installed so he could get his wheelchair-bound friend George up to the porch. He'd built it himself. It wasn't fancy, just functional, and it meant his old friend could visit again. But apparently, Karen thought it didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. Frank sighed and wrote an appeal. He even offered to stain the wood to match his house. But the HOA board, led by Karen, denied it. Weeks later, more violations started showing up. His hedges were uneven. His mailbox was too old-fashioned. And somehow, his American flag was improperly displayed. It felt personal now. Frank's daughter, Laura, had always been protective of her dad. She lived 2 towns over, busy with her work, which, ironically, was dealing with conflicts like these every day. Because Laura wasn't just anyone. She was Judge Laura Thompson, a respected figure in the state's civil court system. But her dad never bragged about it. He was humble like that. When Laura came to visit one weekend, she noticed how exhausted he looked. The pile of HOA letters was sitting on his kitchen table, neatly stacked but clearly growing. "What's all this, Dad?" she asked, flipping through them. "Oh, nothing serious," Frank said. "Just the HOA being the HOA." Laura read one aloud. "Failure to comply may result in daily fines not exceeding $500 and possible lien placement on your property." She frowned. "They're threatening you with liens? Over a ramp and some hedges?" Frank tried to laugh it off. "They're just sticklers for the rules." But Laura saw the sadness in his eyes. This was more than rules. It was harassment. Then came the final straw. A week later, Frank received a notice of intent to evict. Apparently, the HOA had decided he was in repeated violation of community bylaws, and they were initiating foreclosure proceedings to cover unpaid fines. Frank had been paying everything he could, even extra, but Karen had been adding administrative fees without explanation. When Laura saw that letter, something inside her snapped. She wasn't just a daughter anymore. She was a lawyer, a judge, and a woman on a mission. Karen and her board, which was really just her husband and a friend, had been charging illegal administrative fees and using HOA funds for personal expenses. They'd been paying for landscaping on their own property, taking business dinners, and even ordering luxury patio furniture for the community clubhouse that ended up in Karen's backyard. And they'd been doing this for years. Laura didn't say a word to them yet. She wanted to play it smart and legal. She documented everything. bank transfers, meeting notes, and fake invoices. She even contacted several neighbors who had similar complaints. Turns out, Frank wasn't the only target. Karen had bullied a single mother over her kids' bikes being left outside. She fined an elderly veteran for having a small flag decal on his car. She even threatened to have someone's dog removed because it barked too patriotically on the 4th of July. Lavra realized what she was dealing with, not just an annoying HOA, but an abusive one. And soon, justice was going to knock on Karen's perfectly manicured door. A month later, Karen and her little board held their regular HOA meeting, a smug, self-congratulatory event where they read violations aloud and patted themselves on the back. Frank attended quietly, sitting in the back. Then, just as Karen started the meeting, the door opened. In walked Lavra. She was dressed professionally but calmly. No robe, no fanfare, just her presence. Karen looked up, startled. "Oh, Mr. Thompson," Karen said with her trademark condescension. "We didn't expect guests tonight. This is a members-only meeting." "I'm a member," Frank said evenly. "And this is my daughter. She's here to speak on my behalf," Karen smirked. "We don't allow legal representatives." Lavra interrupted, her tone calm but cutting. "I'm not here as legal counsel. I'm here as a homeowner's daughter and as someone who has a few questions about your financial practices." The room went silent. Karen's husband tried to deflect, saying, "Everything's perfectly in order." But Lavra opened the folder and began to read. According to the HOA bylaws, Section 4.3, all expenditures must be approved by majority vote and recorded in the public minutes. Yet, I see several transactions here totaling over $14,000 without any documented approval. Karen's face went pale. Lavra continued, each word sharper than the last. $1,200 for outdoor maintenance, landscaping done exclusively at your property address. $800 for decorative furniture, listed as clubhouse inventory but shown on your patio in a recent Facebook post. Murmurs rippled through the room. "Do you deny using HOA funds for personal use?" Lavra asked. Karen stammered. That's a misunderstanding." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Lavra said. "You've been weaponizing your position to intimidate and exploit residents, including my father." Then she placed another document on the table, a cease and desist letter co-signed by the County Housing Commission and the State Attorney General's office. "You are hereby ordered to halt all foreclosure actions pending a full investigation into the Lakeview Estates HOA." Karen froze. Frank, for the first time in months, felt a weight lift from his chest. The investigation that followed was brutal, for Karen, at least. The state audit uncovered years of financial misconduct, including missing funds, falsified invoices, and misuse of resident fees. The HOA was suspended pending reorganization, and Karen was removed as president permanently. The district attorney's office even considered pressing criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Neighbors who had once been too scared to speak finally came forward. They shared stories of Karen's bullying, her threats, and her manipulation. It turned out she'd built her little empire on fear, and Lavra had just burned it down with facts. As for Frank, he received a formal apology from the interim board. They not only dismissed every fine and violation, but also offered to rebuild his ramp at no cost, with proper approval this time. He politely declined. "I'll keep my old one," he said with a smile. "It's got character." Months later, as life returned to normal, Laura received a familiar case file on her desk. It was from the same county. The defendant? Karen Whitmore. Apparently, Karen had filed an appeal to reduce her penalties, claiming procedural unfairness. Lavra stared at the file for a long moment, then smiled to herself. The case had been randomly assigned to her court. She followed every rule, recused herself from direct judgment due to conflict of interest, but not before making sure the reassigned judge had every document and record ready to go. Karen lost her appeal decisively. She ended up with a criminal record, a massive fine, and a reputation that would follow her for life. And the neighborhood? It became peaceful again. Residents even planted a small garden near the entrance with a plaque that read, "Justice blooms where fear once grew." Frank still sat on his porch most mornings, coffee in hand, birds chirping nearby. Sometimes his daughter would visit and sit beside him. "You didn't have to go that far," he'd say with a smile. Laura would shrug. "You taught me to always stand up for what's right. I just had better tools." Some people think power means control, the ability to make others obey. But real power isn't about control. It's about justice. Karen learned that the hard way. She thought she could bully an old man and his neighbors because she had a title and a clipboard. But she forgot something critical. You never know who you're messing with, because sometimes the person you're harassing is the one who signs your fate from the judge's bench. And that's the story of how an HOA tyrant tried to kick out the wrong dad and got her empire dismantled by the law itself. What would you have done if this were your parent? Would you have gone this far for revenge? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true HOA stories and satisfying revenge tales. Until next time, remember, justice always finds its way home.